I guess before we get started, I just want to say subscribe because it looks like we have so many views on
Yes.
some of the videos, but not all of you. All of you seem to be subscribed. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening on Apple Podcasts or anywhere else, subscribe to this podcast. Give us a follow or whatever it's called on your platform,
Hit the
and
like button.
all of that good stuff. Also, we've got a music playlist which we failed to promote on a weekly basis. So if you go to Spotify, if you go on Spotify, type in Beyond Beats, you'll find a bunch of really awesome playlists that kind of accompany every week's episode. That being out of the way.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
I was gonna say because the playlist kind of consists of what we've been listening to kind of that week, and also sometimes if we have guests on, then we would feature some of our guests' tracks as well.
Exactly. Or like if you're ever like referencing any artists during the episode, we'll pick some of our favorite songs by them and stuff like that. So always a good listen. Make sure to check those out. And welcome to this week's episode. Welcome to Beyond Beats episode number 13. I am DYVN and we've got Metic in the house. Last episode from Hong Kong.
That's right. Let's
go.
I am flying back to New York. We're recording this February 12th, and I am heading back to New York in a day. So, yeah.
Ready
Exciting
for
times.
Valentine's Day.
Exactly. Yeah. Gotta be a Valentine for Valentine's Day.
How you doing, man? I feel like it's been a while since we talked. You've had quite the exciting, eventful week, I'm assuming.
Yeah. The past week for me has been just so jam-packed. Where do I begin? So I just essentially at first I was visiting my sister who moved to Bali last year, and I spent a week in Bali and kind of got to experience how living there, experience Bali life, and just see how it is like my sister's family, just living there. And yeah, it's a very different way of living, very different way of thinking, and it just so I got to experience island life a little bit, but then I got a call when I was in Bali. I got a call from my friends at this Hong Kong band called Rhythm, RIDDEM. They
check them out in this week's playlist.
Oh my God, they do a bit
They're
of neo
amazing.
soul. They do a lot of modal jazz improvisation, and they do a lot of experimentations with breakbeats, and so they have a lot of really cool rhythm sections, and they're just a very cool and exciting sound coming out of Hong Kong right now. And anyway, I got a call from my friend in Rhythm, and they were gonna have a show on this past Thursday, and one of the supporting acts had to drop out last minute, and they asked me if I was down to support them, and I was like, yeah, hell yeah. I mean, to be honest, this trip back to Hong Kong, I really didn't kind of plan anything in terms of gigs. I was really just trying to reconnect with family, friends, and even with my music friends as well, like just reconnecting with them and checking out their live shows and stuff. But I didn't really plan any gigs, so
Lucky enough you had a guitar on you.
Yeah, I mean, I bring all this stuff back with me,
naked
like,
without any.
Exactly. Yeah, I bring all this stuff back with me just out of habit, but like I didn't. I was just kind of like, seeing what will come up, and but yeah, lo and behold, this kind of came up last Thursday, and yeah, I came back to Hong Kong from Bali last Monday, and then I spent the next like 2-3 days kind of just planning the set and practicing. I didn't even have my calluses on my fingers, my guitar calluses. So I really wanted to build up the calluses before the
Right.
actual show, because I don't want the whole show that to be of me just like playing in pain.
Right.
So I just played a
Barely
lot.
making it through the third song.
Exactly. Yeah. So I played a lot, and Monday, Tuesday, like Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. And luckily the calluses came back, and yeah, I played a show on Thursday at this venue called Fringe Club in Hong Kong, and they have a very, very long history. They're a government. I think they have government support. It's a very long tradition, long-standing tradition, and they've been laying low for a while during COVID. But I think now they're starting to kickstart a lot of music events, and there's going to be a lot more music shows coming up there. But yeah, it's a really good venue. It's like the venues that your parents' generation would have heard about, that type of thing. It's a really got a nice bar, good drinks, all that stuff. But anyway, yeah, like
Yeah, and seeing your Instagram stories, it looked like you had like a really good crowd. Like just seeing the amounts of stories that were posted both from Rhythm and you, and it looked really fun. And like both Rhythm and you just like looked like you were on fire. Not literally.
I think that speaks. That
oh my goodness! Why did I have to say that? Cancel me.
But no, I think that speaks a lot to about how Rhythm has been just gigging a lot in Hong Kong.
Right.
I think they've been together since like 3 years ago. I want to say
that Don'cha flip they played just blew my mind. Dude, for those listening, they played like a experimental jazz version of Don'cha by the Pussycat Dolls. They also did 50 Cent track, I forgot.
In the club.
In the club, of course.
They also did
some more stuff that was just...
Some canto covers.
Just blew my mind.
So yeah, they've been gigging a lot, and they've been building up a very sizable local audience so that they can pack a room.
Right.
They make no mistake. Like they're playing. They just came off of playing this music festival in Thailand, which is kind of like Asia's version of Burning Man. It's called Wonder Fruit, and they're playing again coming up in Clockenflap, which is Hong Kong's biggest music festival. So they're making their rounds. So
right.
They're building up. So one thing that I'm really grateful for is that their audience kind of, I make beats, they make beats too, and then our audiences have a lot in common, I feel like. So it was kind of like a natural thing. So I didn't feel out of place there. Let's put it this way.
Yeah.
And it was just a very welcoming crowd, and they were just very ready to get down and dance, and and I just. It kind of got me thinking, man, I should have actually made much more of an effort to like plan out more shows while I'm in Hong Kong. But you know what? That's in the past.
Can't turn back time.
That's the past.
Yeah.
Got to do a show before going back. I'm good. I'm happy.
Right.
Yeah, which kind of leads us into the topic for this week, right? I think
playing live.
Doing live shows. Yeah, playing live as a beat maker. I do have to say, Lamb Chop had a lot to do with it, actually, because he was like, "Oh, actually, yeah, you just played a show. Maybe you should talk about it in the next podcast." Because I kind of shared a lot of my anxieties with him, like with the calluses and all that stuff. I was like, "Oh man, I don't know if I'm going to be able."
What I used to do when I was like 15 and playing my first gigs, I used to, whenever I was watching like a TV show, would just like sit in front of the TV or just read a book, and take my bass onto my lap and just like slide up and down the scale with my fingers. Just press them down hard and slide up and down. Even while I was like chilling, I was just like to get my fingers prepared.
Why aren't my calluses here yet?
Now I'm just like, what was I thinking? But yeah.
But But
it's
yeah,
funny
so
because while you were like living that like actual life of being in Bali and playing a live gig, I was sort of here in my little virtual, or not even virtual, in my little fantasy world, kind of getting obsessed with surfing. I don't know where that came from, but I was just
surfed
like,
for the
you know
first
what, I
time
live in
there.
on the south coast of Sweden, and like waves are pretty good here actually. Like in some places, there's some of the best surfing spots down here. So I was thinking like I really want to start surfing, and while you were in Bali of all places, you know, I was just like, yeah, I should start surfing, you know. So and then I was like also thinking about, I really want to start doing live gigs. I think we talked about it before on the pod.
Yeah.
So I kind of like, you know, looked at all my songs, looked at what kind, like how a set list consisting of my songs could be like, what I could kind of throw in there. Maybe I can do like a flip and like combine some of my favorite rap music or R&B music or, you know, any music with my beats and kind of layer some vocals or whatever. So I was kind of like sitting here planning out my life as a future surfer slash live DJ beatmaker, whereas you were like living it. I don't know if you went surfing, but you weren't.
I don't know how much living it, because this Bali trip I surfed for the first time. I took my first.
Oh, you did. So you
surf
did
lesson.
even go surfing, man.
One lesson.
That's
I got
one
good
gig
wave.
and one surf. I had zero,
Yeah,
but I
one
was
gig and one
mentally I'm there, dude.
But
when you look at my YouTube
make
history,
no mistake though. Make no mistake though. Just want to, for the record, I want everybody to know that you are not a stranger to live performance. You did have your
that's
fair
true.
share of gigs in your band days when you used to play bass, right? For a band.
Yeah, I used to play bass in
but-
a couple of bands. One of them was based in Prague, so I moved there actually. Another band was with my wife. We had a little duo where we played like a little punk rock duo. It was mostly like rock music, so more of that kind of thing. But I did a fair share of touring, of playing live gigs with band music. My biggest gig was actually a sport gig for Kiss. So we did that in front of a packed, sold out stadium in front of 17,000 people. So there's that. And then I played,
What are you doing making beats, man?
A couple of minor tours. Yeah, well, we kind of disbanded, or I left the band not that shortly after. But that was pretty awesome. That was pretty
Sounds crazy.
Incredible.
So, hey, you know what?
I'm kind of like stop when it's at its best or something. I don't know.
But so you're no stranger to prepping, rehearsing, and the pre-concert jitters, which I get
Same.
like almost debilitatingly nervous.
Yeah, and I can only imagine, being with a band, you can at least like focus the energy and like, I don't know, like keep it sort of a little bit contained or bounce it off of each other. Being alone, how does that feel?
I think that's a very good starting point, actually, because I shared that evening with Rhythm. They're a 5-piece band, or they're a 4-piece band usually. Four, but they had a person on trumpet that night, and it was a very big contrast in the sense that, like, I mean, I've always known this, but like when I watch them, there's 5 people on the stage. It's very easy for, as someone in the audience, to just kind of like not put your full attention on the lead singer, but just the bass is shredding right now. Oh, maybe I'll just turn my eyes to the bass, and then wow, the keys guy's taking a solo right now. Oh man, I'll take it. So it's kind of like a feast for those who have ADD, if you will, and which is everybody. And whereas, compared to most other beat makers, actually, because this is what ultimately this episode, we want to rein it back to people who are making beats and stuff. And most of us are going to be performing alone. So the attention, is just on you. And, if you are unsure of yourself, if you are lost on stage, that stuff translates to your audience, Whereas if you're in a band, if you mess up a solo or something, your drummer will take care of you.
Right.
Your lead singer will take care of you.
True.
I think that's the first thing that sets us apart, not necessarily in a good way if you're scared about live performance. That sets us apart from bands. And it took me a while. Actually, you know what? Last Thursday was one of the very first times where I truly felt comfortable talking on stage, talking to the mic on stage. Because I usually have very bad like jitters when I'm just talking.
Right.
And I don't know what it was. I tried out this new breathing exercise. Yeah. I mean, I tried out a new breathing exercise before. Maybe I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, I hope it will translate to my next show. But if it doesn't, at least I'll have last Thursday. But
at least you have one down in the books.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, I think the attention being on one person is one thing you're going to have to get used to as a performing beat maker.
Do you have any tips like as of how to prepare for that other than, prepare actually the show? That's how I would at least handle it. Like make notes, pre-show, think of what you want to talk about, where you want to talk about, maybe even like make little transitions, like, because I remember like I used to also be a lead singer in my second band when I was like 17 till 19. So when I would say something or mess something up, my guitarist would actually react and like play something funny on the guitar, maybe, just like kind of take away from that like awkwardness. Right. So maybe even like make like a musical backdrop or even like a visual backdrop, I guess. That's like the things that I'm thinking about, do you?
Yeah.
In between songs.
I think having visuals will help. Just divert people's attention a little bit for those that need to. Another thing I do is I almost know exactly where I'm going to be talking.
Right.
I'm just gonna at the beginning. I'm gonna introduce myself, and I will sometimes do a rig rundown if I'm doing like my Ableton setup, which is an APC, laptop, foot controller, and then guitar. But if I'm just on an SP, I won't do a rig rundown. But so I'll do a quick intro, and then maybe I'll talk once in the middle of the set, but usually not. And usually when the last song comes up, I'll say, hey guys, this is my last song. You can find me here on all social platforms and on all streaming platforms. Thank you so much, blah, blah, blah. And then play the last song. And then at the very end, just, say thank you, blah, 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 and all that. But that's usually, like, I already know exactly, like, where I will be talking. Of course, there will be, like, spontaneous moments.
Crowd
and stuff
interactions and whatever.
Yeah, but those spots I know I'll be talking, and I won't surprise. I won't be caught off guard if I'm like, oh man, should I be talking here? Or maybe no, I am going to be talking here. Just planning those little details out, and I guess also deciding on a format, right? I think the next two things we should be talking about is format and also gear. So format, what I mean by format is, are you going to do a set without breaks, or are you gonna have seamless transitions? Are you gonna mix one song into another, or are you gonna be performing one song and then stop and then talking to people and then performing the next song, stop? Like, so it's more traditional, like concert
band
vibes.
Yeah.
Whereas with the mixing gapless, it's kind of like more traditional, like electronic gigs and stuff. So I usually just, if I'm on Ableton, I'll have most of my transitions set up, and so it's usually a gapless kind of experience. But that's another big decision. I don't know. How would you approach it? I think if
I'm also considering. I'm leaning more towards a gapless thing that kind of immerses you more. I'm also like thinking, as I did my little set list, I think on Thursday, while you were on stage, probably. I also looked at like what kind of songs flow neatly into each other and which songs might be a little too long for what they are, or like a little too short. Because I've also got a bunch of 1-minute songs. Maybe I could like go back into the project, stretch them out a little bit longer, give them a drum intro or something to make the transitions a bit more smoothly. But yeah, I'm also leaning towards a gapless experience.
I think that's, if you're really nervous, if you get really nervous on stage, gapless is probably a better way to go, so that it minimizes dead air and silence.
Personally, I'm like kind of I get nervous before I go on stage. Like that gig that I mentioned before, the 17,000 people gig. Kiss. You would think exactly. Kiss, yeah, which happened to be one of my favorite bands, or at least they, back then they were one of my absolute favorite bands. So that was, we also met them, by the way. So backstage, so it was, yeah. You would think that you get nervous in front of such a large audience, but we were like super well rehearsed, obviously.
Right.
We had every little single thing planned out with the band, like every like transition, everything the singer would say was all like kind of rehearsed and it's kind of still, done in a way that it feels natural, but it felt really professional. And so when I went up there, it's always the bigger the crowd, even the more the crowd gives you back, the more energy I can like bring up on stage.
Right.
So for me, like that was my best gig ever. From the way I performed, from the way I just played my notes on my bass, everything, like the way the band kind of played together, it was all just perfect because the audience was like really welcoming to us and really supportive. So it was just, the more the merrier. And I only get nervous if it's only like 10 people and they're all like kind of not interested. That's when I get nervous,
Yeah, me too. I would say the same.
Because then I'm just feeling like, why am I wasting everyone's time here? You don't want to see me. I don't want to like play for you. That's kind of.
Yeah, I know exactly what you mean. But it's definitely something you should get used to. You should get used to playing to empty rooms.
Absolutely,
because it's also an experience that you have to get over.
I've done my fair share of those. Yeah.
I guess next, so gapless. So how about gear? I think gear also determines a lot about your set. Because for me, at least, I can. My full setup is Ableton, APC, guitar, live guitar, and all that stuff. But I've actually been trying to trim down my my live setup a little bit, just because usually when I go to beat gigs, which usually people just bring their SPs or MPC lives or what have you, and with an Ableton laptop and all this stuff, it's just so much to bring. So setup takes a while, tear down takes a while, and it just doesn't, it's you don't want. I feel like I'd be holding up everyone's time. There's a couple times where I'm like, okay, man, I'm trying to get out of people's way, Just kind of get out of people's way.
I know how it feels, being a bass player with always like the largest suitcase and like the biggest amplifier, like unless the guitarist has two, which was the case in our band.
Right.
But having like that big refrigerator amplifier, I was like, I always needed someone else to help me out carrying it because it was so heavy.
Right.
Like the speaker, not the amplifier. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
So how would you do it? Like, so my smaller setup would just be like a SP. But I've actually been trying to integrate effects pedals within the SP chain.
Okay.
To kind of add more effects, if you will.
I want to hear more about that because my like your entire thinking of going with the SP, because you're a guitarist first, I guess, and then a beat maker, and then a live performer. So when you am I getting this right or?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'd say so.
And so when you do a show, of course, your like full set is with a guitar. For me, it's like I feel like I'm a producer first, then a bass player, or like, you know, then a lot of things and then a bass player. I love playing bass, but it's not, at least not anymore, what I define myself or what I want to tie myself to, you know. So I guess, you know, I play the keys way more than I play the bass guitar, for example, because I do a lot of synth bass as well. So I don't feel the necessity for myself to present myself in front of a live audience, at least not for now, as a bassist. I would love to, because I just love playing bass, to get back there at some point and perform my music sort of as more of a free, like jazzy set with a little trio or, you know, like a little band. But I guess that's way into the future, and I just want to get out there and you know, meet crowds again and have a reason to, you know, when I'm in a different city, have a reason to go to a different city, you know. And then also like, because as a musician it always feels like I could go there, but I could also play a gig, kind of like you were saying. And like most of my traveling I've done was as a touring musician. Like we've played,
that's amazing,
like you know, all the way down to Spain, like all of Europe. So you know, I just want to like get out there and do that again whenever possibilities or occasions occur. So, and that said, being a dad as well and being a family man, I do want to like pack as little as possible. So long story short, I feel like I'm giving all those lengthy answers, but I just given it so much thought. An SP404 would currently, as cliche as that might sound for a lo-fi jazz producer, that would currently be my weapon of choice, because I feel very comfortable performing with the live effects. And
I will say, in New York, Vicky Cassis, shout out Vicky Cassis. She's like an amazing beatmaker. She also runs QSTV, which also curates a lot of beat shows, and she gigs with a Machine Plus actually.
Oh, so sweet.
That's also a possibility.
I've got 2 of those,
you know, just using that rather than
shout out Native
just a
Instruments for
production
sending
tool.
me one.
Exactly. So rather than just a production tool, she uses it as a live tool, and she does it very well. So totally. I mean, just juggling effects, because you can totally juggle. There's an effects strip, and like there's all these knobs, and so yeah, you can totally do SP like effects there too. So, but yeah, I think finding a setup that is mobile will also kind of be beneficial, very beneficial.
Right. How do you do that? Like, do you want to like get a little bit more into that? Because I really want to hear more about your approach doing the SP sets.
I would say this is kind of like the last area of what we should be addressing, which is how appealing is the experience. Right. How appealing? Like, okay, fine. Like, if you have, if you're performing with an SP, right? Yes, you get to play your beats. You get to juggle effects. But how engaging is the performance? And I think the important thing is not just to juggle different effects and without thinking. You know, it should be a much more practiced and conscious process, because it's very easy to fall into a trap of just loading up your songs into the pads, into the SP pads, and then just going to DJFX, going to isolator, going to filter, and then going to phaser, and then going to those, cycling through those 5 different, and then without really thinking too much about it, like. So yeah, I think it's because sometimes like I can get into my head sometimes, like, oh man, am I using DJFX like too much?
Too much.
Yeah, it's like but and how engaging are you making the SP? And then there are some people who absolutely kill it on the SP. One example is Yumi Soul, who's another very talented beatmaker from Brooklyn, and the way I see him perform the SP is unlike any other I've ever seen, and he attacks the SP and he actually cycles through a lot of effects, much more frequently than any other people, and that's why it feels like, you know, he attacks the SP with a vigor, and it's that's why, like, you know, to the casual viewer, like one time, you know, my wife went over to one of the shows I was playing at, and then she saw Yumi play, and then she was like, whoa, like that guy was like I see what he's doing. It kind of like it tells me, like it kind of translates to the viewer that like, oh, it's like he's bobbing to it, and he's also like
he's in it, and he's on fire, like, not literally, but
it's like it's more engaging than, like, say when I play the SP and I'm just like triggering an effect here and there, and sometimes I don't trigger it too accurately, too well, whatever. So there are people who do the SP and they do it really, really well, and that I would even watch them if they were at a Coachella, you know, if they were just doing the SP at Coachella. I'm like, okay, I can see that, because
I guess it's also SP about amazing. What kind of music you're playing. Like if it's like, you know, the SP effects, they work really well with certain types of lo-fi hip hop and certain types of beats, whereas with others it just feels like a little bit out of place, maybe a little bit like so you still have that sort of in your blood, you know, doing the effects, which is why I stopped doing them, why I stopped using them on my, like, imprinted into my master files of my songs, because I was just like, wait a minute, they don't really fit my musical style anymore, which is why I'm still hesitant, you know, towards how I would approach my live set, because like I said, on the one hand, I want to pack lightly. I want to, you know, travel and just have like a minimal setup. And, you know, just basically rather do something that feels engaging, or like, but I'm still not sure how to engage an audience, especially being only one person and all of those things. So I think you're like hitting it on the spot here with your questions, and it also shows how considerate you are doing the shows as you do, which seems kind of like obvious, being a guitarist and a beat maker, that you would perform with a guitar in Ableton, but it just shows to me that it goes way more into, like, the fact that you chose that setup is less simple than it might look like.
Yeah, I mean, put it this way, right? Like, you also have to consider your audience, right? If I'm at a beat gig and my audience consists of primarily other beat makers, I know that, you know, what I'm playing on the SP. Like, I know that other beat makers. It's like the way I go to beat gigs. You know, I listen to the beat, and then, yeah, it's cool how you trigger your effects and stuff, but like I listen to, you know, what you've produced, what you've been producing lately,
with the ears as a producer as well, like,
right? With
you
the
listen
ears,
to the textures and all the little things.
I'm not necessarily going there and I'm like, oh, is he getting my attention, or is he or she like getting my attention adequately by the way he or she juggles the effects? I'm not judging that as much when I'm going to beat shows. But then when I'm going to, like, you know, concerts where there's a lot of non-producers at the gig, well, then I'm gonna be taking out my Ableton. I'm gonna be playing live guitar, because I feel like there's more for people to relate to, and there's more of what I'm doing on stage that will translate to the audience, and
you're also like visualizing the music through actually playing it live, because people, you know, non-musicians, non-producers might have a harder time connecting to the music, or like, let's put it the other way around. That's what live music is made for you to connect physically to like the music. So when you have someone playing their instrument, and with that live element as well, you know, those little imperfections, it just makes it more.
Yeah, I mean, that's why you have people like Disclosure, right? If you look at their live setup, I mean, their live setup is like massive right now, but they would have like, you know, just like a snare, just like a MIDI snare, you know, and then it would just like build ups. They'll just be hitting the snare, you know, it's just very simple snare rolls and stuff like that. They're not doing anything crazy, but they include it in their set because it's so immediately recognizable.
It translates,
what you're doing. Right. And then so people can kind of, it's another thing that people could latch onto. But that kind of brings me to like, you know, where I'm at, how I currently feel with my live set right now. And I still feel like there's still a very big gap between what I'm doing now and what's actually like kind of professionally accepted at a like a, say, festival level, you know. Like I feel like there's still so much more, especially as a solo performer, right? Because how many solo performers do you really see at festivals other than DJs, right?
I'm thinking of San Holo right now. Do you know him? He's like this Dutch
San
producer.
Holo does it really well.
Like he comes up in my mind.
He does
an
really
amazing
well.
show with, I think you're set up, right? I think he performs alone and with a guitar. Or does he have a
guitar
band at this point? I'm not sure.
I'm not sure.
Maybe I think he's singing as well, doesn't he? I think that's like a difference.
Yes.
He's also doing vocals.
That takes so much pressure off in terms of like what you're doing,
because you
singing,
permanently
you're bearing your soul,
interact with your voice.
Yeah, it's just so much more primal of a thing for people to connect to rather than what you're playing on your instruments.
100%.
Right. So I mean, as non-singing people, it's much. So like FKJ is one person I can think of. There's this guy Younger, Youngr. He sings actually, but he does these live loop. So what I'm driving at, like FKJ, Younger, these people who perform as solo performers at big festivals and stuff, they incorporate a lot of live looping and a lot of different instruments. Cloud Chord, who actually I saw him play once in Brooklyn, and he plays guitar. He has a lap steel. He has a lot of pedal effects and Ableton running. He's doing push. He's playing stuff live on the Ableton push as well. And then there's a few other things that he does live. So like there's so many more instruments other than the guitar,
right?
That kind of keeps him busy on stage. And the more
I was just gonna say, it almost feels like it's more about like not watching someone awkwardly standing around, because it's like, to me, like the difference between, because there is, you know, when thinking of SP404 beat sets or live sets, what I oftentimes feel like is that people are too busy, like to like when you say someone attacks the SP404 in a good way, that's to me, that's the part that kind of stands out, because I see a lot of producers like going crazy with the effects. I'm just like, can you just leave the buttons alone for a second? You know, because to me it's almost distracting from the beat itself, like, you know. So it almost feels like if we're busy, the audience will be busy, which kind of goes back to what you said in the beginning about rhythm. The way they have 5 people who all do their thing really well. So you can kind of latch onto each of them, see what the bass player is doing, see what the drummer is doing, what the singer is doing, obviously. And so as a solo performer, in summation, you got to do all those things as one person. So if you're not busy, it's a bit
the audience will just sometimes,
the less
like,
busy you are, the
just
more boring it gets, sort of, I guess.
Yeah, it's like if you're just on stage, like there's some songs where I'm not playing much guitar and I'm just juggling effects on the APC. You know, the effects I'm juggling, I like the effects that I'm juggling, but like sometimes if I'm hunching over the APC like for like 3-4 minutes straight, like, you know, sometimes I'm like, man, maybe I should be doing something else, like to keep people engaged, and like, are people walking out the door, you know, like, so there is still like a major gap between what I'm doing right now and like what's like generally accepted at a professional level, and whether that means I need to add more to my setup, whether that means I need to incorporate live looping into my setup, which is like a whole other beast,
right? I think it's all about like getting to the zone, and once you like, if you have enough buttons to push, like figuratively and literally,
not enough buttons,
then you get into the zone of you know, the music. So the more layers of complexity you kind of find for yourself to add to your live performance, the more whilst you know, still kind of engaging with the music, shaping the music, creating it, and like being busy making it, the more you also like give that air to the audience of feeling engaged with the music,
Yeah.
so you are
Yeah.
also engaging to the audience in a way. That's just something.
But at the same time, I always think back to and compare a little bit to like what I'm doing on stage versus like what DJs are doing when they're on stage at big festivals. Like sometimes a lot of them just work on CDJs, and then they do their transitions, and then they do the EQs and effects and all that stuff. Like they're just they do that really well, but at the same time, like
that's like 20%, and the rest is just 80% having a good time, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you're driving at?
Like, yeah. And so what I'm trying to say is like maybe the solution isn't to add more crazy complexities in your set. Like maybe sometimes it's just simplify and do more and have a good time while doing it, and try to get people to vibe with you.
I love how we built up this entire thesis, and then we just backpedaled within 10 seconds.
I mean, I'm just trying to invite all of you listeners into my mind, which is a freaking mess when it comes to like tailoring my live set and seeing what I think will get people. I'm just taking you inside my jumbled mind when it comes to like what to do with my live set, because I'm literally at a loss sometimes, because I think like, oh, the solution is to add more, but sometimes I'm like, oh man, you know what, maybe play less.
And that's why my answer is SP404, not because I feel like that's like the status symbol of a lo-fi beat maker or something, not because I feel like that's the way to go because I want to trigger a lot of DJ effects and buttons that make my beats go whoop 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 whoop, but just because of the simplicity of it. That's why I love it so much, because it's just so. That's why I don't want to perform, or like I'm not considering, at least currently, with my Machina Plus, because I just feel like there's more options. That's why for the longest time I preferred the SX over the Mark II. Also because I couldn't get my hands on one, but that's a different story. Just because less options is oftentimes better, and I just feel like if I limit myself in my performance and just leave a bunch of options to me, like with the SP404 being quite limited, I feel like I got to be more creative, making it appealing with everything else, and like rather, I don't know, like filming some visuals and making a backdrop or something, or just anything that kind of sort of outside the music makes it a compelling experience, which is also why I haven't played any live gigs as DYVN yet, because I haven't found any like proper solutions, and I haven't given it a lot of attention either. But I feel like it's oftentimes outside the actual music that there is chances as well to be exciting. But
I think
we don't have the answers here.
Exactly. We're all about non-solutions at Beyond Beats. So I think is the solution to do more? Is the solution to do less? We don't know. Ultimately it's everyone's different, right? But
hopefully this conversation gave you some ideas of what to like, how to approach this, gave you maybe a bit of because I feel like you gave a really good overview of which things to consider, which things to keep in mind, and in the end everyone will find their own way.
And it's always a process. It's always a process, because I thought, that was one of my better gigs on this past Thursday, but at the same time, like, I also still know, like, there's still so much more that needs to be done to actually make it a compelling, like, experience on a professional level. It's just, there's so much more work to do. And that's, just gotta keep doing it.
Perfectly depressing note to end on.
Yep. That's welcome to my mind. But that's where improvement comes from, and everybody. But I think that's a pretty good place to wrap things up.
If I may just add, though, everyone go check out Metic's latest post, at least as of today, which is February 12th. I hate when we date those recording dates because that means I have to edit fast, and that usually slows me down because I feel the pressure, and that it takes me 2 weeks to edit. Anyways, everyone go check out the post you made about like when you like reposting
Just
all the stories
and stuff. Yeah,
man,
yeah.
it's mad. Like I think it looks so good
It's
because
such
I
a good
feel like
vibe.
you're way too humble. Like I feel like to me it was just everything a live set, like a small live set for a small
Honestly,
venue from one person could look like. And to me, that's just like the overall thing. Like I don't even want to get into details. Like your guitar tone sounds so good. Like the way you play everything. I was just like, this is perfect, really. So
honestly, I think just the audience makes the biggest difference in the world. Like
it does.
And that night it was I haven't had this much fun in a while. Like it was one of those nights. And
yeah, I could tell. Like I could tell from that's why I was saying right in the beginning, the audience must have been good, because the audience makes or breaks your gig. It's not your calluses on your fingers. It's the audience. Blame the audience.
Yeah, it's none of it's the performer's fault. No.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in to this week's episode of Beyond Beats. Don't forget to listen to our playlist. I feel like there's going to be a lot of music from all the performers that we mentioned throughout this show. So definitely tune into that playlist. We're going to leave a link in the YouTube description as well as the podcast description. Don't forget to subscribe if you made it to the end. And
that's right.
Thanks for spending time with me and Metic.
See you in the next one.
Bye.